Gorley. I am one of the owners of Discount Granite Plus, and I am pleased to serve as a director on the Barrie Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors. Again, I'd like to thank all of you for joining us this afternoon for our chamber chat and our session on working towards remote learning success with your kids. 2020 has seen many changes to our everyday lives, not of least of which is the return to school. Parents have had such a difficult decision to make about what would be the best course of action for their families, and then of course trying to figure out how to make it all work. As the weeks have been progressing, I think we're all starting to figure out what's best for all of us, but there are a lot of questions to be answered, a lot of questions that I know everyone has, and I think we all still need a little bit more help. So today's panel of experts are actually here to share their tips and resources to support you and answer the questions that have been burning inside of all of us over the last few weeks for sure. From setting workplace boundaries with your kids, reducing anxieties, and dealing with Zoom fatigue, to helping your kids stay focused, getting extra help, this session is going to help to make sure that you know that you have made the right decision for your family and that we are all going to get through this together. I'm actually a mom. I'm really looking forward to hearing all the things that you ladies are going to be able to share with us in this regard, because I know how tricky it's been trying to work and again homeschool and send my kids back to school and all of that transition. So I'm really again very pleased to introduce our panel of experts in a moment for this presentation. There will be an opportunity for some question and answer. So our Q&A session will open up after we've heard from each of our guest speakers today. To submit a question, Q&A function or button rather than use the chamber chat, which is actually accessible through that Zoom platform. So we're going to stay away from that. We're going to ask that you type your questions out when the time is appropriate. But again, we'll open up that, that phase of the discussion when we get to that. So I will read all of the questions and direct them to the appropriate expert of our panelists for discussion once we get to that stage. So today I am pleased to introduce Sue Cook from Family TLC, Arlinda Demiri from Scholarly Elite Tutoring, and Michele Kapteyn from Empower Simcoe. Each of our experts will have an opportunity to share, so please bear with us while we go through this. And again, save your questions for the Q&A. But Sue, if you'd like to start, again, Sue Cook from Family TLC, we'd love to hear from you and some tips to help make sure we are all working towards remote learning success with our kids.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. And as you said, I'm Sue Cook from Family TLC, and we are a organization that provides psychotherapy or counseling for all ages. We say 3 to 93, so if you're 2 or 94, you can't come to us. But other than that, we've got lots of people that can help with individual, children, teenagers, adults, couples counseling, all of that. And prior to starting and owning Family TLC, I used to work in the school system as a child and youth care worker, and so I have some understanding of, child development. And I remember what it was like to have children go to school, and I would go to school and work with children, but to have children at home while I was trying to work wasn't something that I ever had to figure out. And I just want to say, first of all, to everyone, all of our listeners and everyone, take a breath, because this is not easy, And the first and most important thing that I would say that we need to be thinking about is you acknowledging for yourself, whether you're a mother, whether you're a father, a grandparent, whatever you are, and you have children at home, you are doing a job that somebody goes to university for a very long time and has lots of structure and lots of resource and prep time and all of that sort of stuff. When we think about our teachers and what our teachers do with our children, you are doing a phenomenal job, even though you're probably sitting there as a listener right now going, what am I doing? This is hard. The other thing I think you need to remember is your child. Your child knows you. You've got some expertise right then and there that if you give yourself that breathing space, you'll open up some great ideas and great creativity. And we get, there's I didn't get a chance to talk to the rest of the panel, so I honestly don't know what they're going to be saying. And I was trying to think about, you know, from a therapist perspective, it's about that self-efficacy and helping the child and you learn and feel the ability that we are going to figure this out. And sometimes we might be pulling our hair out, sometimes we might be laughing, but we are going to be able to figure this out. And I think the best thing that you can do with your child, if they have anxiety or if they have performance pressure they're putting on themselves, or they're having difficulty focusing, or you're exhausted and you're trying to juggle so many things, is to be able to take that time to sit down and be able to reassure them and you and say, we can figure this out. We're going to get through this. And then have your child, it doesn't matter what age your child is, brainstorm with you about some of the problems and some of the solutions. It's different. We're not teaching or doing for our children. We're understanding, we're learning, and we're helping them understand more about themselves. So things like teaching a child, when is your brain the sharpest? What is the hardest thing to do? And so when do you take that hardest thing to do and when do you fit it into your schedule? So we all know that with ourselves. If I'm writing a report, I need to do it in the morning because I'm the sharpest in the morning. But asking your children those kinds of questions about that, I love the idea of the genius hour. You know, let your child or children realize how smart they really are, and give them that time to really be sitting and saying, hey, you're a genius, what do you want to focus on? Hey, you're a genius, what do you want to be creative about? And how can we kind of get that help stuff happening? So I can give you lots of tips about space and how to set up your space. I can give you tips about how to take breaks and take care of your mind and your physical and your social. I can give you tips on scheduling and all of that sort of stuff, and really giving the children positive feedback. But I think when it comes down to it, it's about remembering to have fun, remembering to know that you guys have got this, and this is hard. So give yourself some self-compassion and teach your children all about self-compassion. If we aren't being self-compassionate during this time, guess what? You'll be tired. You'll be exhausted. When you're hard on yourself, the energy that it takes to beat yourself up because you're not doing it perfectly, or because you and your child had a little bit of an argument, or you're trying to force them to sit down at the table or whatever, that energy is going to drain you from being able to come up with creative solutions. So fun, self-compassion, belief in you and them. And then, you know, mindfulness meditation is a catchphrase that everybody's talking about right now, but there's a reason for that. Mindfulness meditation, if you do a guided meditation, or you and your child do some yoga or whatever it may be together to do that relaxation piece, that's going to move you, that's going to rebuild your energy instead of the hard on yourself, draining yourself. There's tons that I can say, and I'm open to answering questions about all of that. I just wasn't sure what everybody else was going to say, so I wanted not to duplicate what everyone else says.
Well, thank you so much, Sue. Truly, if you have any questions, audience, all of our participants today, again, we're going to save those for the Q&A period. So we really appreciate hearing from you, Sue. Thank you so much. Arlinda, again, Scholarly Elite Tutoring, we would really love to hear from you and have some input from you and your perspective with respect to this topic.
Excellent. So hello, everybody. My name is Arlinda Demiri. I am the CEO and founder of Scholarly Elite Tutoring. We are a tutoring company that focuses on individualized holistic learning and truly focusing on the mastery of concepts so that children can build their confidence levels. In saying that, I really loved so much of what Sue had to say, especially around the idea of self-efficacy and helping children build the idea that they are capable and that they are people who need to try new things. And even if they're difficult, it's okay if we fail the first time or the second time or however many times, because that's where learning comes from. And in terms of tips and tricks, like Sue, I could probably talk about this, you know, all day. Not that she was talking all day, that's not what I'm implying, but it's something that we work with every single day. And some of the main takeaways that we've seen since virtual school started really just come down to helping children feel like they're part of the process and really making their education a collaborative process. Because when, and it doesn't matter what age they are, when people are you know, engaged in a certain type of learning that they feel is very disconnected, it makes it more difficult for them to absorb the information, to be present in their learning. And we know that with virtual learning, kids are sitting in front of their computers most of the day right now, unlike they were last year when there wasn't so much one-on-one synchronous learning. Now we're doing a lot of asynchronous learning, and now we're doing a lot of synchronous learning. Last semester, we were not doing so much synchronous learning with the students because the school boards at the time had to get everything in order. And when it comes down to synchronous learning, what we're hearing a lot from parents is that kids are getting a little bit burnt out. So that's another reason why I loved what Sue had to say about mindfulness meditation, incorporating activity, because we know that the connection between physical activity and cognition is so important. But in terms of our perspective as educators, there are a couple key things that we've noticed are very helpful for students, particularly students who might have focus issues that are in front of the computer all day. Like I said at the beginning, incorporating them into their learning, helping them choose and also prioritize their tasks. So giving them that opportunity to take a look at a more complex task, let's say, for example, writing an essay, and sitting down with them and breaking it down into as many little pieces as possible so that they can prioritize what's most important, and then they can build that momentum as they go through the material. Then also what we like to do is mix online learning with physical learning tools. Depending on what age your child is, there are so many manipulatives out there that you can incorporate into your child's learning, but you don't need to break the bank. You can even get something as easy as beans if they're learning how to count, or if they're learning their multiplication tables, really just engaging them in a way that isn't necessarily using the computer, as well as helping them become more active learners, depending on what they thrive with in their learning. And one of the things that has worked really wonderfully for some of our younger students is building a token system. And this is really just a way to help incentivize longer active learning periods. So what we do in the beginning of this whole discussion is sit down with students and ask them what are meaningful prizes for them. And they don't need to be things that cost anything. It can be something as simple as an hour of fun iPad time, or being allowed to go outside for a walk, or you'd be shocked at some of the things kids say. They really have amazing suggestions when you ask them what they want to do. And then you create some kind of point system, and it really just varies by the child for how long you need them to focus for. But helping them understand that active focus is really important, and keeping yourself engaged in what's going on with your learning is going to be one of the key factors. So I know that a lot of parents have come to us asking us to help with focus issues. I think that those are some of the main areas that we have found to be very helpful. So prioritizing and helping kids be part of the process, creating some kind of token or reward system that is really, really going to make them feel like they're working towards a positive goal. And once that momentum gets started, you will really be surprised at how quickly students tend to worry less about their token system and tend to become just active and really involved learners. And then finally, I think that one of the most important pieces as a parent, like Sue said, is to have that self-compassion and give yourself that understanding when it comes to the fact that not everything is going to be perfect. This is an unprecedented situation in which parents, educators, everybody has just been thrown for a loop, and we're figuring it out as we go along. So at the end of the day, if you are putting in your best efforts and something doesn't come along as exactly the way you wanted it to, allow for that, I guess, self-compassion or peace to come together so that you don't need to beat yourself up about it. It's really just a process. And at the end of the day, if we give ourselves self-compassion and children see that, it helps them build that skill set as well. And really, at the end of the day, so much of learning comes down to confidence in oneself. And when children tend to lose their confidence early on, it can be really difficult to build that back up. So as a parent, giving yourself that just break from having to be perfect, I think is a really great starting point. And like Sue, I'm happy to answer questions and discuss all of the minutia, because I don't want to bore you guys right off the bat with discussions about how to approach IEPs in virtual learning and all of that. If parents have specific questions that they have, if parents have specific questions for us, I'm happy to answer anything that anyone in the chat might be wondering.
Thank you so much, Arlinda. Really appreciate hearing from you in that regard. So our last panelist today is Michele Kapteyn from Empower Simcoe. Michele, we'd love to hear your input with respect to this topic. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Perfect, there you are.
Okay. All right, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. Our two previous speakers have shared a lot of information, and I'm going to just take a slightly different tact here. I'm wondering how many people have chosen to school their children at home who perhaps have a child who has some special needs, or they have very little young children, so their children are in the preschool years. The reason I'm going that way is because my area of expertise actually lies with younger children, as well as children and youth who have exceptionalities. So one of the things I'd like to talk about comes from the actual pedagogy document from the Ontario government, and it's called How Does Learning Happen? And it's a pedagogy document for the early years. And one of the things that it starts with is there's some really core beliefs that are really important. So we need to believe this not only about our child, but also about ourselves. And if you're taking on an educator role, it is really important to believe this about yourself. So wanting to really firm up the idea that children and parents are curious, they're capable, and they're competent. And when those things are really part of the value system, and there's a strong belief in those things, it makes a difference, because you start to think about it's not about how things are done. It's about moving to a place where we can be creative to get from A to B, but with the belief that your child is capable, and you are capable as well as being an educator. I also would like to focus a little bit on the idea of really following your child's lead. Your child can give you a lot of cues, and if it's a bit too rigid and scheduled, and you're finding that you're more frustrated than feeling like this has been productive, and you're getting you and your child are getting some value out of this, take a step back and really listen and watch and observe your child. I really love the idea from our previous one of the previous speakers that talked about that time of productivity in terms of when is the best time for your child to be receptive. But that also applies to you as well, in terms of your frame of mind and how you're feeling about things. we know from families that generally dinner time, right around sort of the end of the afternoon, is a really difficult time, challenging time in terms of behaviors. Usually, children are hungry and they're tired, and as are parents. So, paying attention to things like that is important. The other 6 words that I would like to focus on actually come from Can Child, and Can Child is part of the University of McMaster, and they've done some really good research in terms of supporting children who have exceptionalities, and incorporating these 6 F words into your frame of reference really helps us understand and move forward. Now, because I'm talking about children with exceptionalities, doesn't mean that these don't apply to all children, because what we've learned over time is if we find something that is good for a child with exceptionalities, it's usually good for all children. So function is the first word. So function refers to what people do and how things are done. It's so basically function is what is being done, but the pathway to get there is not important. So when we think about children, we think about play is their work. So if you can frame some of the tasks that you're doing with your child in terms of learning as play instead of work, it's really, you're going to get to the same end goal. It's not important how it's done. It's just important that it's functional. The other F word is family. So family represents the essential environment of the child. So you're wanting to maintain that sense of family, even though you're taking on the educator role. And I would say this is probably the most difficult thing, because when you're teaching your child, I think there's a sense of pressure or stress there that can strain the relationship in other ways. So taking a step back and remembering that in all of this, the thing that's most important to maintain is healthy relationships. So checking off the boxes, yeah, it's important, but not as important as maintaining healthy relationships. The other F word is fitness. So incorporating regular breaks into your child's day and schedule, and into your schedule as well, is super important. Getting away from the screen, getting away from the indoor environment, and going outside and maybe just kicking a ball around, or going for a walk around the block, or shooting some hoops or something like that. The fourth F word is fun. So fun, basically the activities that you're working on should include an element of fun if you want to maintain a level of engagement. And there's all kinds of creative ways to do that. The fifth F word is friends. So this is a little bit more challenging now in terms of where we're at as far as social distancing. And we know currently with our current numbers, things are looking that we're pulling back in again, as opposed to expanding our activities. So friends are really important. So maintaining some kind of connection with friends, either through the screen or old-fashioned telephone call, or I would say even going back further than that, and maybe hooking up with another family and looking at something like a pen pal, and getting something in the mail can be super exciting and motivating for children. And it's a little bit of an unusual thing in terms of normal experience, because usually we communicate electronically through screen and email and text, but actually having communication with a friend by mail is something that could be pretty motivating for your child. The sixth F word is future. So when we think about future, we're thinking a little bit bigger, and it's about remembering how to dream. So it's stepping back from the day-to-day minutia and thinking about the big stuff. And one of the things you could do with your child or your youth is create a dream board. And again, it's not about it's really not about how things are done. It's just about how it's about making experiences meaningful. So a dream board can be an exciting thing to sort of think about the future, even when things are pretty stressful right now. There's still really exciting things going on. There's still really exciting goals to reach for and dreams to plan. So with that said, I do have some resources that I wanted to share with you, especially for little ones. But we can maybe get into that in the question period. However, I would suggest maybe I send some links later to the moderator, and they can be shared out that way. So.
Thank you. I think that would probably be the easiest way, just to make sure everyone's able to capture it. We're not sure where everybody is and who's tuning in and from where. So it'd be wonderful if, yes, we can share that with our audience later on. So thank you. Thank you, ladies, all so much. I know I have got a ton of questions. You've all touched on a lot of really great topics. And for me, I'm very excited to ask you my questions. But again, we're going to open it up now to the Q&A portion. So that we can hear from our audience and make sure we're capturing everyone's time effectively before we wrap up today. Just a reminder to please submit your question through the Q&A option in the Zoom platform and type your questions there. As they come in, and I can see a couple are already starting to filter through, I'm going to read them out, and we'll kind of direct them accordingly if they're directed or intended for a specific panelist. If not, we'd love to hear from the three of you as we go. So bear with me while I try to figure out here some of these questions that are coming through. So our first question, are there any calming techniques that you can recommend for me and for my kids? I think we're all tired and have low energy, and I find that I have less patience than I usually do. So I'm not sure who would like to take on that question, but what are some wonderful calming techniques that we can try to explore as parents in this regard?
Can you hear me? Yeah?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, we can hear you. Thank you. Yeah, sorry about that.
Okay, no problem. So one little technique that you can do just in the moment, if you're feeling exhausted or you're just feeling really right then and there, is just really do some grounding techniques. So something that can re-energize you, or some really excellent grounding techniques. For example, just take a moment, say to your kids, let's put our feet on the floor and try and laser focus in onto the toe beside your baby toe. And feel what that toe feels like, or what part of your body is a part of your body that you hardly ever notice, and like behind your knees. Doing some of the strategies that the kids learn at school too, around the whole idea of 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Like what's 5 things we can see in this room right now? What's 4 things we can smell? What's 3 things we can hear? 2 things we can feel, and 1 thing that we can taste, and just getting that sort of grounding piece. Then other things to be thinking about as far as, relaxation and mindfulness goes. I know we're spending a lot of time on screens, but there are some terrific apps out there. There's Calm for Kids. There's terrific YouTube videos where you can just listen to a relaxation, a guided relaxation. And I love those because they take the pressure off of you to actually have to do that stuff. And even shifting your energy, like our other speakers have talked about doing the physical things. When you're tired, it's probably because you've got Zoom fatigue, or when you're tired, it's because you've been pressuring and pushing and trying to learn. And if you just take a minute to shift your body or shift your activity, that can make a real difference. And we also have a family TLC app, and we've got some on our family TLC app. We've got some things that you can go to for creating calm places and learning how to go to that calm place together in a guided manner. So lots of resources out there, and if you searched and found 6 different things, that can last you for a little bit of time. You can just repeat those things over again. Lots of in the moment, taking 15-minute breaks, but then also those guided relaxations are really helpful.
Thank you, Sue. Does anybody else have anything to add to that point before we move to the next question?
One quick thing I did want to mention in helping yourself regulate emotions as you are dealing also with your children's emotions simultaneously, which can be a lot. Definitely incorporating breathing techniques. One of the best ones that is very quick is box breathing. And for anyone who has not been shown this before, it's a really great way to help calm your parasympathetic nervous system. I know it can be really difficult because now with virtual learning, there are very structured times and children need to be on screen at particular times, and you want your kid to be there in front of the screen. And sometimes we just can't get kids to cooperate. And I think in those moments when we see that there's some kind of pushback, addressing the child's needs in terms of their emotional needs, because all behavior is a response to some kind of emotion or thought that's going on in their mind, and allowing them that time to be pulled aside and asked, is there something else that's not being addressed here? Are you, one of my favorite ones is the HALT, hungry, angry, tired, all of those things, they come into play because sometimes children are just overwhelmed. There have been studies coming out that show that seeing many faces on a screen at a time, the way that children are seeing them on Google Meets or on Zoom or whichever program your child's school board is using, can be very exhausting for our brains, because typically when we're speaking with one person, we're only interpreting their facial expressions. But when we're on Zoom or whatever other program is being used at schools, we're interpreting a lot of facial expressions at once, and our brains are tired. So just giving children that compassion, and giving yourself that compassion, because it's human to be tired, it's human to be impatient sometimes, and just taking a step back, giving yourself that sense of, like we keep saying, self-compassion, a chance to breathe, calm yourself down, and then ask yourself, is what I'm trying to get my child to do right now really a priority in this moment? And sometimes if it's not, it might just be better to take a break. If it's an opportunity to get outside and get some fresh air, or whatever the situation might be, you might find that after about a 15-20 minute break, if it isn't absolutely necessary for the child to be in front of the screen or to be doing the work that they're doing, that things are much easier after even both parties have had that time to really take a chance and relax themselves a little bit. So that's my main suggestion as well.
There are a certain amount of breaks that you would recommend. I'm sure it varies with age, but throughout the school day, is it like, what do you suggest, ladies, from a break standpoint for our kids, those especially that are, learning from home and have that screen time that might be advantageous to ensure that their learning is as productive and impactful as it is intended to be?
I think it's a bit age and related to a degree. So for younger children, of course, if you think about attention span, you'd want to build in breaks a little bit more frequently. And for older kids who have a longer attention span, you can stretch that. But I certainly wouldn't go for any more than 45 to 50 minutes without changing, like for an older child, without changing position or having a break. I think that would be about the max I would go in terms of sitting in front of a screen without a change.
Perfect. Perfect.
Just one last thing there. I know that right now for parents, it can be very difficult because due to the synchronous learning that's happening with teachers being on Zoom or on Google Meets, whatever the platform is, you don't necessarily get to decide when your child has a break. Mm-hmm. That said, I mean, at the end of the day, they're in your home. And if your child really needs a break, I think that just sending the teacher a quick message saying, hey, you know what? We're not having a great moment here. I need him or her to be taken away from the screen for a couple of minutes. We'll be back. Just so that the teacher also isn't concerned if they all of a sudden don't see your child behind the screen. And I think working collaboratively with your child's teacher, if you're finding that the number of breaks are not adequate for your particular child, having that discussion with teachers can be really advantageous early on, because it gives them a sense of what to expect and also helps your child become part of that process if they need to take some time for themselves.
You know what, Arlinda, that is actually a perfect segue into our next question, communication with our teachers. And really, I agree. I think we all need to make sure everyone's on the same page, considering the platforms of the circumstances around learning these days. But our next question is actually, how often do you think we should be messaging our teachers? Do you think they want to hear if our young child is having a hard day, or if they're having difficulty with a particular project? Is that something that we should be bringing to them, or should we just kind of keep muscling through this on our own?
Oh, sorry, I had to figure out the mute there. I think that the question I would ask myself as a parent is this actionable information that I'm sending the child's teacher? So when you're thinking of messaging your child's teacher, firstly, I think at the beginning of every year, semester, quadmester, whatever we want to call what we're doing right now, reaching out to your children's teachers to ask them what they feel is an appropriate amount of information, because some teachers are going to just not respond to constant communication. It's just some people's style of communicating that they don't really enjoy being messaged all the time, or whatever the situation is. So I know that that's not so much a broad answer, but I think just like with children, teachers are all individuals as well. And so I can't give one answer that works ubiquitously, but working collaboratively with your child's teacher to say, hey, what kind of updates do you find helpful? What kind of updates can I give you that will help change your approach to working with my child? Because oftentimes teachers can give you that feedback, and that way you can determine, am I emailing the teacher once a week with kind of a broad overview? Would they prefer to have a more in-depth discussion after every day or after every 2 days? Because depending on the teacher and their teaching style, it can really vary. So sometimes, even though we might want to message the teacher constantly, it might fall on deaf ears if they're not a person who communicates consistently through email or whatever the situation is. They might prefer a 1 call a week where you're just wrapping up and discussing what were some of the issues with the projects, or what you felt that your child saw as beneficial this week, how they can incorporate your child more effectively in the future. So I know that's not a blanket answer for this type of question, but at the end of the day, I don't think that messaging your child's teacher is a bad thing, as long as it's being done in a professional and kind manner. Teachers are great across the board. We've dealt with, hundreds of teachers at this point who we work with parents and communicate with their teachers a lot as well. And more often than not, teachers like to hear feedback, because you know your child best. You're the one who's raising your child. You're the one who sees them on a day-to-day basis. And you also, when it's virtual like this, have a better sense of what's going on behind the screen. So maybe the teacher, if I was to put my hands down, you can't see if I'm fidgeting with something, but the teacher might not be able to see that. And it might be something that's pertinent to your child's education. I hope that was helpful. I know that wasn't a concrete answer, but I hope that at least gives you some place to start with your child's particular teacher.
No, that's great. Thank you. Thank you so much. I don't know if Michele or Sue, if you have anything else to add to that, or if Arlinda's captured it all pretty articulately in this moment. No, no problems. Then let's move on to the next question. Just trying to be mindful of time. Are there any red flags that I should be watching for that might let me know if my child is falling behind? Are there particular behaviors or language that I should be watching out for?
I think we need to remember again that you know your child better than anyone. And if you start to see behaviors where it seems out of character for your child, if it seems like a regressive type of thing, so your child has accomplished something and then they are no longer able to do it. So, you know, really young children, if they're toilet trained and then they're not, that's a regression. They've gone back, they've met a landmark or whatever, a benchmark, and then they go back. If you're noticing any kind of loss of, like, you want to be careful to watch for three things: intensity, duration, and frequency. So if you're noticing that something is way more intense than it used to be, and it stays like that for a little bit of time or happens more often, then that's something to worry about. But as we go through changes, as children go through frustrations in doing things, some of the acting out or the acting in, isolating, you know, being quiet, acting out or acting in behaviors are going to come up. And I don't want you to worry as soon as you see one thing. It's about intensity, duration, and frequency. Then those are the times to start to be saying, okay, there's something going on. And sometimes it doesn't matter how old you are, it's very difficult to know what's wrong with you or what's going on for you that's causing you to feel differently. And for children, it's even harder for them to be able to articulate it. So I think you got to trust your gut and recognize that you can see things. And then it's about learning to providing the opportunity for your child to communicate. And that communication may come through them sharing a song about how they're feeling, or it may come through them, you know, talking about a character that puts it away from them a little bit, like a cartoon character or a stuffed animal, or it may be them talking about themselves, or it may be them drawing a picture, but giving them vehicles of communication that aren't just, hey, how you doing? What's wrong? I think something's wrong with you. You seem to be doing this or that or the other thing, but allowing them that sense of space and security and safety to communicate what's going on. But I think if you're feeling like there's something wrong, just check that frequency, duration, and intensity, because you're probably tired, you're potentially might overreact, and that can be a good guide.
I could.
Thank you. Thanks, Michele. Did you have something to add to this discussion?
Yes. So if you're really concerned, I would reach out to some resources to perhaps work through a developmental screen with you. If you're starting to be really concerned about perhaps if your child is not meeting their milestones. So in this case, I'm talking about probably a child from a 0 to 6. If you have really little ones, you could contact an early years center, and the early years center can work through a screen with you on the phone. And then if there are definite concerns and there's further steps needed, they can direct you to the right resources. And there's also a lot of resources online that you can access in terms of your child's developmental milestones. I can send some links for our participants to look through. But I would say if you're concerned, don't stay in that place of worry. Reach out to someone, and it may be something that is, not concerning at all, but it is concerning you. So it's better to reach out instead of holding on to that worry, because um, that will just put you in a state where um, you can't resolve it. And if there is something going on, there's a lot of resources out there to help and to get assistance for a child who may be having some challenges and difficulties.
From a perspective of looking at students who are a little bit older, when we give children more autonomy as they get into the later grades, upwards grade 7 and up, one thing that we have noted just in our work and also in the research that we've done for our various programs is that procrastination and task avoidance can often be one of those red flags for children, because as study upon study has shown us, procrastination is not really a time management issue. It's more of an emotion management issue. It's that children or whoever, I mean, I've procrastinated, we've all done it. Typically when an individual procrastinates, it's because they're trying to avoid the negative emotion that comes with doing the task. And sometimes that can be a really key indicator of the fact that a child might not be mastering the concepts that they needed to master at that point. And just letting your child know that just because they are not sure of where they are right now, or that they might be behind, doesn't mean that they need to be behind forever, or that this is an indication of their capability or their intelligence or anything of that nature. Giving yourself, like Sue and Michele both said, that ability to communicate with your kids, really have a discussion about, well, why are we avoiding our work? Why is homework seemingly being done less and less? And I think looking, like Sue was saying, looking at all of those key factors, are they all of a sudden stopping their homework? Are they waiting till the last second to complete tasks? These are all key factors that definitely should be noted. And as a parent, like we've all said, you know your child best. So if something is off and you have a gut feeling, just address it. I think at the end of the day, getting to the core of the situation is going to be much more helpful than waiting for more obvious red flags to appear later on.
What I'm taking from all of this and this question and the responses that you ladies are actually sharing with everyone is, again, just kind of that piece around building a child's confidence. I know my son has had some frustration for sure, especially in the early stages with everything going on in the early onset of, homeschooling and the overextended March break, as we called it. And just trying to find ways to ensure that they were confident in this new system of learning, whatever that looks like. So are there any resources that we could possibly consider as parents that we can look to help really rebuild our child's confidence, short of course, being there to support them through this journey and this process?
I think celebrating the successes really in the moment is really important. So even if it's something minor, if there's something that your child has accomplished, it's really important to recognize it, because that will build confidence. So as your child receives positive reinforcement for, it can even be, a really small thing, and you just continually build on that, it's really important that they feel that sense of mastery. And that sense of mastery can be built by giving them positive reinforcement. It can be a token system, as was referred to earlier. It can be verbal praise. It can be a high five, but just recognizing it, and nothing is too small to recognize, and then it will build, and your child will start to feel more confident and capable as time goes on.
To piggyback off of, oh, sorry, Sue, go ahead.
That's okay. I was just going to say the self-recognition, or the patting oneself on your own back kind of concept in teaching your children how to do that. I think one of the places that we fall short a lot in society is individuals celebrating themselves and celebrating their own successes. And so by doing it externally, you giving it to your child is awesome, and they're going to thrive with that. But then having them set goals and then say, okay, so how are you going to celebrate when you accomplish that goal?
And just one quick thing to piggyback off of what Michele was saying in terms of building success. Success is such a key element in building confidence when it comes to learning. And oftentimes what we recommend to parents is to start with topics that your child has mastered. So if we're working on fractions, for example, start off the session by working on something that they're really good at in math, such as multiplication or whatever the situation might be, and then segue into the new topic so that they start off feeling really confident. And this is something that has been shown in pedagogical research over and over again, that giving children opportunities to demonstrate their mastery and their success in the beginning of a learning session before you introduce more complex topics can be a really nice way to segue them into things that might be new to them or are just more difficult in general, so that they can feel that positive energy from you or from being able to complete the initial tasks, and it helps build a momentum as they keep going forward.
Great, thank you. No, thank you. I think we're all frustrated with trying to, teach the new concepts of learning that are going on these days. I know fractions for me, at least try and teach my my grade 4 student how to do fractions compared to how I was taught them is a little bit challenging, but that's a whole other topic that I'm sure we can share for another day. So thank you for your tips in that regard. Just continuing on with questions and trying to be mindful of time. My 8-year-old has been having some self-regulation issues since March. His emotions are much bigger than usual, and he is overreacting to small disruptions. Is this a developmental stage he would likely have been hitting anyway, or is it something that is stress-induced and something that we can address?
I think there's we would need more information to answer that question thoroughly in terms of whether it's something that the child would be hitting naturally or if it's induced by stress. Let's talk a little bit about stress induced first. So think a little bit about how many changes have happened in your child's life and in your child's environment. So the other thing is, we talked a little bit earlier about some regulation strategies, and one of the things that came to mind for me was sometimes when children are stimulated in different ways, especially if there's been a lot of screen time, you can see some changes in behaviors. So a really practical strategy to help bring a child back to a state of calm is actually just reducing the amount of input that's coming in auditorily, visually, through tactile. So something, and you said your child was 8 years old, so this could be an appropriate strategy. You could get an indoor tent. You can get them on Amazon. They're not very much money, and basically build a calm environment inside the tent. Cushions on the floor, maybe some books. But what the tent does is it really cuts out all of the visual stimulation that they're getting in their environment. And if it's in a quiet room, it can become a place to kind of decompress and sort of bring the body back to a state of calm, because you've blocked out all kinds of different sensory input. And if that area or that space is exclusive to your child, they may start to go there on their own when they're starting to feel their system amp up. And if they just have that space carved out and they can identify when they need a break, that's really powerful, because they're recognizing the things that are happening in their body, and they're then taking action to help themselves come back to a state of calm. So it's something you could try. The other thing is, I'm not sure what your outdoor environment is like, but I've also seen some really nice success with kids who've really had some trouble with regulation, just going on the swings for a little bit. Swinging can help the body come back to a state of calm too. So if you have a swing set in your backyard or you've got a nearby park, that's something that can also help your child come back to a state of calm. I think I see Sue nodding there, and I think you have some things to say too as well.
I just think, you know, sometimes when our children are struggling with things, we want to go to the place of why, and feel like maybe sometimes the knowing why will help us to figure out the how. And more often than not, whether it's a developmental thing or whether it's a stress thing, the way that we help teach our child to learn how to manage their emotions is going to be the same. Whether it's stress or developmental, the strategies are the same. So those strategies that you were talking about, the emotional regulation, things that you were talking about, lots of resources for that. I think it's just, if you're asking that question, it's a little bit about trying to find a little bit of peace of mind for yourself. You know, if this is a stage, then they're going to grow out of this stage, and I'm a good parent and they're just going through a stage. If it's stress, maybe I feel like I'm not being the best parent because I'm not protecting them from the stress. Neither one of those are really true. It's not about you being a good or a bad parent. It's about you see it. You do see what your child is going through, and thank goodness they have you, and thank goodness you see it, and getting the strategies, and you participating in this webinar is awesome. Your kid's lucky to have you.
I think that is just looking at a couple of questions that are coming up and just trying to be mindful of time. We started shortly after 3:30 and we're about 56 minutes into the call. And again, just to be appreciative of everyone's time, we're just going to try to get through the next few questions very quickly. Again, the Barrie Chamber of Commerce is here to help you through this. So we are going to be providing a list of resources and strategies to help guide you through based on our panel's expert experience and expertise. So please stay tuned and look for that over after the discussion has concluded today. And if, of course, you need something more, you're always able to reach out to us and we'll try to guide you accordingly where we can. But the next two questions, I'm going to kind of merge into one. Children that have gone back to school, my children are school age. They've returned to school, and since then they've stopped visiting with their grandparents for safety reasons, of course. This mom is worried about depression and separation anxiety from her parents or from their grandparents, because of course they have such an involved family, which kind of ties into the next question, which is, again, there's a number of media covering, of course, COVID and the germs that are going around. There's a lot of information about this. And now that her child is back in school, she was better able to control the media. And now the child is becoming paranoid and she's worried about, again, long-term anxiety. So looking for strategies and tips and tricks to kind of help to really help manage what's happening in the world and the way to manage that anxiety long-term to ensure that there are no long-term repercussions from outlets that we can't control. Are there any suggestions that anyone might have in that regard?
That's loaded.
No.
Anxiety is real. It's normal. It's natural. We all have it. We have it for a reason, to protect ourselves. The problem with anxiety is we get a thought, then a thought, then a thought, then a thought, and we go to catastrophe. So anything that's a target that you're anxious or your child is experiencing anxiety about, what's happening is they're building pathways in their brain to go to this place of catastrophe, and their body, their mindset doesn't realize that they're using their imagination to go to a horrible place. So if we want to be conscientious of time, I'm going to go real short on this. You're going to use your imagination. Let's use our imagination worry about great things or to worry about solutions or to focus on the positive. And I'm really minimalizing my answer here because separation anxiety, worrying about germs and getting germophobic, all of this stuff is potentially going to come out of COVID and how life has changed. So I think reaching out and getting some help and learning how to help your children realize anxiety is normal. It's just when it runs away from you. So there's a good book called The Anxiety Gremlin. It's a book that parents could get and use with children. There's other resources out there where you can just teach them what anxiety is, and then they can learn how to manage that anxiety. Separation anxiety is a whole nother ball of wax, so it's hard to answer quickly.
One thing that we have discussed with parents a lot is helping children focus on the things that they can control. And as Sue said, changing their perspective, changing their focus and where their attention is going is really a great starting point for most kids, because like she was saying, it oftentimes has to do with imagination. And although we can't see into our child's imagination, if we give ourselves a chance to communicate with them and see where their mind is going, and then help them shift that perspective towards something along the lines of, well, we're missing grandma and grandpa. What can we do about that? How can we communicate with grandma and grandpa? How can we keep them involved in our lives in a different way? And maybe that new different way will be really exciting and a great source of communication that we never thought of before. So there are different perspectives that children can take, and oftentimes helping them shift the narrative can be really great overall.
Wonderful. Thank you. There are a few other questions, to be honest, that we have come through our Q&A, but just being mindful of everyone's time, we are nearing the end of our discussion for today. What we will do is share the remaining questions with our panelists. And of course, we will give an opportunity for all of the participants today to, again, follow up with them directly at, if everyone is okay with that, to ask any additional questions that we might not have been able to have addressed today. And of course, as I mentioned, you can always reach out to the Barrie Chamber of Office team, and the staff there is always working very diligently to ensure our community is supported, and all that we can do, all of the resources that we have access to, we are sharing with them. So again, thank you. In closing today, I really do appreciate the time that everyone has taken out of their very busy days to spend time with us discussing this very important discussion, this very, very important topic. Thank you all for all the work that you've done to help, again, flatten the curve, for your continued focus on protecting our community, our families, our kids. So again, pat yourself on the back. We're doing what we can, the best we can, and we are going to get through this together. Please continue to shop local. Support your neighbors, support your family, support your friends, and our intentional choices with shopping through our local business community. As I've continuously mentioned, and I will again today, the Chamber is here as a resource. We have continued online sessions coming up over the course of October. Next Wednesday, October 14th at noon, our Chamber Chat networking session with face-to-face connections will be continuing. So please do register and join in for all of the fun and the networking that will come along with that today. October 20th to 23rd is the Accelerate Summit. It's an online format this year for safety reasons, of course. Members can save up to 20% with the discount code in Caplocks Chamber Love. So you've got 4 days to choose educational and inspirational, and listen to inspirational speakers, and help you work on your business. You can craft your own adventure when it comes to learning. So please take a look at the Chamber website, see what some of the courses are that are being offered, and pick your own adventure when it comes to supporting your business and helping it grow throughout our challenging times. October 26th at noon is our annual general meeting, the Barrie Chamber of Commerce's AGM. This typically is the most important meeting of the year for the Barrie Chamber of Commerce, as we give you an overview of all of the activities and financials from the year previously and things to look forward to in the year to come. So please do double check with your membership, your status, and make sure that you are eligible to participate in this very important event. So again, thank you all so much for taking time this afternoon to be with us. Stay safe, and we look forward to seeing you all again soon. And thank you again, Sue, Arlinda, and Michele, for your time today. We really appreciate all of your input with this very, very important topic.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Have a great day,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Thank you, everyone. We'll see everyone soon.
Bye.
Bye.